to eat it and become like God. They ate it. Did they become like God? Unfortunately, there was a catastrophic collapse. There was a crack. There was death. So this is what the church, this is the mission of the church. Bringing our young people and telling them that, look, telling them the truth. The second approach which the church uses is also to encourage them to get involved in youth groups. Those youth groups are meant to be able to help them. They establish good and enduring friendships. Those friendships can be very supportive and they can be very realistic and help them to be able not to be consumed by their emotions, by loneliness, and by that emptiness of the world. Once they embrace it, they can go astray. But once they bond themselves in the groups, the apostolates of the church, you see them, they are able to overcome their passions and they are able to survive the stress and the tension that the passions offer. The third answer which the church offers to these young people, Jesus has come to redeem us. Jesus is the Redeemer and the Savior. That name Jesus means he is God. It means he has come to save us from our sins. And so when we get loving Jesus, we get used to him, we enter into deep and enduring relationship with him. His graces support us to be able to overcome our passions so that we are able to live chaste and fruitful life. Chaste and a chaste life, of course, a chaste life, a life of abstinence, yes. And we are able to survive that attack of the passions because we are redeemed. We are redeemed. Now you want to ask me, okay, what about those who don't believe in Jesus Christ? That's a question. Yes, those who don't believe in Jesus Christ, whether you know it or not, the graces still come to you indirectly. Whether you believe in it or not. It's like refusing to believe that oxygen exists. Whether you believe in it or not, the oxygen exists, and just the very fact that you are alive is a clear proof, an indication that that oxygen is there, which you have been breathing and still rejecting, and that is what has been sustaining you and keeping you alive. And other things, you know, we can be able to overcome our passions when we do sports, healthy sports. You know, we do sports and we dissipate that energy, that raw energy, and we remain healthy. We are also the kind of magazines that we read, also listening to good music. These are all ways by which we are able to combat our passions and prevent us from plunging ourselves into these dangerous emotions to be overcome by emotions. At the end, we find ourselves getting into delinquent behavior, and sooner or later, HIV becomes our portion and death becomes our way of life. But the pro-life movement is there to be able to help you, to be able to assist you, to journey with you, so that in that way, you are able to know that your life is the precious gift of God. And we have a responsibility to preserve that life. And once we use these mechanisms, these strategies put in place by the church, we are able to protect ourselves from this deadly virus, and we are able to stay longer, stay healthier, and we enjoy our life to the full. Right. That is why Jesus Christ came, that we may have life and have it to the full.
Indeed. Now, when you were saying all of these wonderful things, I saw Mr. Kensa here doing some gestations. Now, express your mind as a young man. When you hear Father talking like this, how do you feel?
Oh, thank you for giving me the floor again. I'm waiting for this period. Father actually mentioned so many things which I think I will take about maybe 2 or 3. In the very first place, the way Father is like hitting hard on the HIV as a deadly disease, which I do not agree, because HIV is not a death sentence. It's just a virus that you can live with it as long as possible. Right. It's when you get to the 8th stage where it becomes a problem, where you can now bring in the name of death. Because I believe, as a young person like me, if I'm sitting out there watching this program and I get Father talking very hard, I bet you I may actually stop taking my medication if actually I'm on the medication. Because this virus that we're talking about here, it doesn't only end at the level of virus, but mentally as well. He also worked with the mind, because there are people who have actually been able to take their medication because they have seen one of their peer on ARV. I'm saying it out of experience, out of fact, because this part with me. On the other part, Father was talking about the truth. When we talk about truth, I think from what Father said is the truth, but let's go to the reality, which is still the truth. We are talking about the truth in regards to what the church says, but in regards to what the society is going as the days goes by, what do you have to say about it? Because normally, in as far as these persons indulge themselves in activities, like Father said, we know there's fire here, and the child put the hand and stuff like that. That's good. But nevertheless, how many times parents call their children for a meeting to talk about sexual relationship or sexual education? I'll bet with you it's difficult. But sometimes you come home and you see a child watching maybe novella or a channel, instantly you take the remote and change the channel. You are already putting a mindset on that child's mind, meaning that channel there's something there, and you're hiding that from a child because of what you coded in Christian background, which I don't agree. On the other part, Father made mention of young persons should indulge themselves into groups. Is a very good point. But I'll criticize again. How many times priests come to those groups to monitor the movement of these young people? They don't come because of too much multi-purpose, multi-function. You get a priest, he's a principal, he's a student, he's a curate. They don't have time to actually come to church or to group to see these children. And they manage themselves in their own way and how they feel like it should go the way it's supposed to go. But perhaps, Father has made mention a very good point here, but on the other part, I'll ask the question, are we or are you people priests doing it regularly, not doing it today and you stop tomorrow? No. I mean, it's a continuity. Because as the HIV has come to stay today, the 1st of December, many organizations have come out with all kinds of placards, with all kinds of t-shirts that were being printed. But after tomorrow, what next? They go back and stay in their shelf. They only wait again in November for the month of awareness. So I think that this is a very good platform for us to actually see. We brainstorm together, see the reality further. Let's talk facts. Right. Let's talk facts. Because when we talk about HIV as what the church says, is that what happens after you are not there? I don't think so.
Right. Now this is this is a challenge Mr. Kensa is putting on the table. Now the church's principles and the reality on ground. Before I get to Father, who is doing a lot of writing and noting, let me come to you. You heard what he said, and he's speaking the minds of many youths, many young persons out there. Matter of fact, many Christians who leave the reality on ground. They leave the pressure, but also they get to leave the exposure, which sometimes overcloud their moral doctrines and something they just have to give away. But I mean, so you as a priest representing the church, how do you accommodate all of this? How do you bring back the Christians to their feet so that they follow the church's doctrine, of course, which is the non-use of contraceptives, non-use of condom, and only abstinence, which many of them still see to be very, very challenging?
Yannick, it's a very, I would say maybe a difficult question. But like I said at the beginning of it, with God everything is possible. And the Christians in general, they have to believe and to know that Jesus Christ is there who came to save and is the Redeemer, came to redeem everybody. Mm-hmm. The priests will try their best.
What are the practical steps? You as a priest, yeah. I mean, you assume yourself so much responsibilities. You're you're supposed to moralize Christians and bring out the best out of them. So what do you do on day-to-day activity to prevent your Christians from contracting HIV?
Yes, Mr. Yannick. Basically, during when you have sessions like Mass, for example, today the whole of my preaching or sermon was on this whole celebration of World AIDS Day. I started that reflection at 4 a.m. this morning, and like our brother said, how often do we after today, the 1st of December, do we continue doing that? Of course, in our parishes we do have recollections, we have seminars, we have where we come there to give maybe talks to these young people.
Youth comes, right?
Yes, when the youth they come together, and we try to educate them on this. But then the priest cannot do it all. He cannot do it all. That's why I said at the beginning, it is something that involves everybody. The priest is just like kind of a pace setter, a leader who guides them, and then they go back to their homes. The parents will take up from that, and the youth themselves must do that. We cannot be there, like our brother said, all the time to remind them of this particular thing. We give them the truth, we give them the basics, and we expect that back at home their parents are going to do that. Maybe back there in school, the teachers are going to support them, but we try our best to do what we can do. God will always help those who help themselves, and we try our best to make sure that we help these young people, but we cannot do it all. Like 100%, we cannot do it all. It is difficult, but like I said, with God everything is possible, and they have to take things serious and to know that when the priest will give them the examples to follow, we give them the guides, they should make the effort to put those things into practice.
Right. Now, let me come back to Father. You're not only a priest who has this responsibility, of course, to promote the church's doctrines and mission. You're also a pro-life advocate. You are there for life and everything. Shed some light. What do you do on your daily activities to keep the Christians in check so that they don't fall prey to the societal pressure?
Thank you, Yannick, for that. But before I go to that, let me just give a very, very quick remark here that to Mr. Kensa's remarks. I was talking about prevention. I was not talking about those who are affected. Of course, those who are affected, I'm a counselor, I'm a priest. The church is always a mother. And as a mother, she is merciful. She gives hope, and she tries to help those who are already victim of this to be able to gather the broken pieces of their lives and to give them a kind of an orientation again in life, and to remind them that it is not all over. But at least there could be some residue of life to hang on to and to keep moving. Right. So the church offers hope. So what I was mentioning that the prevention, if I am not affected, what can I do to remain healthy and to free myself from this? Abstinence and fidelity for those who are married. So that is what I was saying. And also, as a priest, I have in my parish a pro-life group. And that pro-life,
when we even talk about pro-life, what do we mean?
Pro-life, these are individuals. They can be even atheists who decide to support and to cherish the gift of life, because life is the most precious gift and life is sacred. But most especially the children in the womb, because these ones are the most vulnerable members of our community. They cannot talk for themselves, they cannot fight for themselves, they don't have a voice. So the individuals in our world take upon themselves, who call themselves pro-life, to advocate for the right of unborn children not to be destroyed through abortion.
Right.
Yes. So in this way, these young people in my parish, they have constituted themselves into a group. They do three things. First of all, they pray to Jesus, who came that we may have life and have it to the full, so that they can be empowered and given insight on how to be able to recognize life, even life in the womb, as a gift and to cherish it. Secondly, they read documents, they inform themselves. They read the church's document, they read secular documents, they read UN documents, they read declarations, they read constitutions dealing with the issues of the unborn and issues of life. So that because not to be informed is to be deformed. And so information is very relevant and necessary to be a pro-life advocate. Thirdly, they have mission whereby they go to the field and they don't have a pulpit like the priests will have. They go to their own peer group members so that they can be able to talk about pro-life values and the importance of safeguarding life. Because through their intervention, your own friend who might be thinking of committing an abortion, and it has happened to me on the repeated cases, my friend and other Christians, young girls who wanted to commit an abortion, and through counseling and talking with them, they preserved the child, and today that child is healthy. And Mr. Yannick, this whole thing, let me say this and say it in very clear terms. This disease we are talking about, HIV, the virus, which is causing AIDS. On the day of judgment, some individuals who have died of this disease, they will meet God and will say, God, I pray to you to heal me of this disease. And you did not, God. I'm very angry with you. And God will ask them a question. I gave you a child who will come and discover the disease, the cure for that disease called HIV. And what did you do with that child? You killed the child through abortion. So you are blaming me? Every child is God's answer to one problem in the world. That is why we must be open and accept every child in the world. No child should be killed. No child should be rejected. No child should be abandoned. As a pro-lifer, we accept every life as a gift and as an answer to God.
Right.
Now, just to mention, to close up so that other members can also have, as priests, we do our best. But remember, there are also the schools whereby these children must continue that formation and that support. Because once we priests, we teach them the truth, and the schools go and unteach these children, that is a disaster for our community. And eventually, look at those statistics that we're giving there. Just imagine that kind of attitude continue. There has been a lot of unteaching. There have been a lot of lies told to those children. That is why to people in general, that is why those statistics keep rising. Instead of telling people the truth, you keep telling them the lies, the statistics will continue increasing. So the school should help our young people to teach them this truth, so that when we teach them, the school also support. Secondly, the families. The families must also come on board as stakeholders in this fight, so that all of us can be able to, when we the priests, we do it at the level of the church, the families does it, the school does it, you will be able to see a unified action, and those statistics will reduce.
Right.
And thirdly, society. Society now represents all the medical experts, all the authorities, all the different stakeholders in society, the activists, the non-governmental organizations, to continue telling our children the truth. It is very painful, Mr. Yannick, when you see a non-governmental organization teaching our children lies and telling them that actually condoms can be able to prevent HIV for them. You are sending those children for a suicidal mission. And when you do that,
so scientists are also sending it because it's science backed, and doctor is here preaching that too.
Tell us something.
Doctor is giving his principle as a scientist, but science is rooted in truth. If science is true, those statistics will reduce.
Right.
But if those statistics continue to increase because of the use of the result of science, there is something faulty in that scientific principle.
Right, Father. Now, without cutting you short, please just permit me read something for you, which will be very interesting to you. We are taking ourselves back to 2010, and when Pope Benedict XVI was asked whether the Catholic Church was not opposed in the principle to use condoms, the Pope said this: "She, of course, does not regard it as a real or moral solution, but in this or that case, there can be nonetheless, in the intention of reducing the risks of infection, a first step in a movement towards a different way, a more human way of living. That is, a more human way of living sexually." And the Pope gives the example of the use of condoms by male prostitutes and says it's a first step towards moralization, even though condoms are not really the way to deal with the evil of HIV infection, but it is the best of lesser evil, of greater evils. What does it mean by that, Father?
Yes, that question was posed to me on the day I was doing my defense on the natural method of family planning at the seminary. And it's because there have been a lot of interpretations as far as that statement is concerned. When the Pope says it is the first human way of recognizing that this disease has to be prevented. It is the first human way of recognizing that this disease,
not divine way, but human way.
Yeah, human way has to be prevented. The first way has to be prevented. Come back to the incident I brought at first. Has to be prevented with an effective instrument or a less effective instrument. That is why he says there that even though it is a less effective instrument. So the Pope recognizes that, yes, you may think that you want to prevent it and all of that. It's a human way. Of course, it should be that instinct to prevent it. But when you use that means, which is less effective to prevent it, at the end of the day, what happens? You still recognize that those who use it, even those who are very effective and faithful in using that condom, at the end, they still end up incurring HIV. So at the end of the day, where do you end? You discover that condoms are not the effective and efficacious way of preventing HIV. Rather, abstinence and fidelity for married couples remain the one authentic, truthful, and very relevant and sure way of preventing yourself, staying healthy, and living your life and enjoying this precious gift that God has given you. Don't wait until you get infected, you become a victim, before you start suffering from those consequences. Then you start carrying your head on the head. You said, if I only knew, and you start regretting. That would be too dangerous.
Absolutely.
Man, take your time, take the effective way, and it saves you right.
You know, very interesting. Father, thank you so much, Father, for enlightening us and expanding our thoughts on some of these very relevant topical issues. Now, let's leave preventions, methods of preventing HIV, and now look at those who've contracted AIDS. Let's leave HIV now to AIDS. It would appear HIV patients, to greater extent, AIDS patients are seen to be out of this world. There was this general mentality where you just hear of the word HIV AIDS, that person is already some kind of either a zombie, alien. It's an alien, and there is a different kind of cloud that is placed on that. What accounts for this, Doctor?
Oh, before I get to your question, I just want to make a correction with respect to what Father said.
Right.
Now, the prevalence of HIV has been on the decline in Cameroon. It's not rising, it's decreasing. Back in 2014, we're at 5.7, and presently we're at 2.7, 2.7, around that. It's on the decline, but the problem is, how fast is the decline? They expected that by now it should be lower than that. So it's not going as fast as predicted, but it's on the decline. Yes, it happens that at some point in time there are peaks of rise and a certain fall. When you study epidemiology, when you have a fall in a disease and suddenly you have a peak of a rise, the question is, why is it rising? And you try to address that problem that's leading to the rise to make the peak continue going down. So HIV prevalence in Cameroon is on the decline, but the decline is not as fast as we expect it to go. So meaning the strategies put in place are working, but not working as fast as we expect them to go.
Interesting.
Okay.
One.
Now, to come to your own question now, HIV and AIDS. HIV is not deadly. It's not synonymous to death. No, it is not. Back then, the death rate of HIV was high because the drugs were not available, and when it was available, it was very expensive. Added to the fact that it was not available, it was expensive. The side effects were terrible. The side effects sometimes were as bad as, even worse than the illness. But now research has made it so much that the side effects are really minimal, really minimal. Now, when you have HIV and AIDS, the first problem people face is the stigma. People know I have HIV and AIDS, I'll be rejected, and that happens a lot. I've seen that a lot. The child would find she had HIV from her mother, the mother died. As soon as the child's aunt discovers the child is cheerful, she puts the child away, goes to the village, and keep the child there. But it's a stigma. Now, with that aspect, when people know there's a lot of stigma behind HIV, they are scared to even do the test. And who says not doing the test says don't know your status. If don't know your status, HIV positive says infecting others unknowingly, not willingly. That's how the trend continues. Now, among those who know their status already, they are scared to go to the hospital and say I have HIV, scared that they will judge them. And if you don't take your medication, you get sick and you die of HIV. So those are all the steps they're trying to breach. Stigma has a lot to do with the way people perceive HIV. HIV, now if you have, you can even live longer than somebody who is not HIV positive. That is true. The medications you take will suppress the virus to something very minimal, or you can get to a stage of viral suppression or undetected. Somebody who is virally suppressed will have fewer or no opportunistic infection, so you'll be very healthy. You can get married and have children without infecting your partner. You can do many more things without having the chance to infect others, because they say U equals U. Undetected equals untransmissible. Meaning if you're undetected, the chances for you to transmit the virus to another person is very, very, very minimal, not to say zero. That is the goal we're trying to attain now. You know your status, you are sick, you just gone on treatment directly. Back in those days, several years back, what happens was this: you're diagnosed HIV positive. Don't wait until you get to the stage of AIDS before put on treatment, just because the treatment was not affordable or really available. Now they found out that strategy failed. Many people died of it, because by the time you want to intervene in someone who is already at the stage of AIDS, generally too late. What they did was they said, no, it's open to everybody. If you're found to be HIV positive, just put on treatment directly for you to attain to the stage of viral suppression undetected, and you live very healthy like every other person. The only difference between you and another person is the fact that you need to be taking medication to keep on being healthy. Now, I have one question for Father. Now, if someone is born of HIV positive, you're a young man, you're HIV positive, would that man not have the chance, will not have the right to get married and have his family, knowing that if he gets married, he will have to protect his partner? As you said, the gift of life is sacred. If his HIV positive gets married and infects the other person, he has not protected life. In that case, what should he do? He should stay single. So these people are doomed to remain single. No, the society says no, it's not just for them. And that's why they put in place maybe barrier methods to prevent him from infecting another person, for him to not feel discriminated, left back. HIV is not a death sentence. It's not the end of the world. It's just you being sick and you need to remain healthy, and that's just it. If you start putting barriers that this man cannot do this, you prevent others from even seeking help. And if you prevent them from seeking help, they will spread to others, and that's how the disease will keep on spreading.
Right.
So that's just it.
Great. Now, let me come to you, Mr. Kensa. If by any chance you knew that your neighbor or your partner is an HIV patient, how do you look at that person?
Well, thank you for giving me this again, Yannick.
In all honesty.
But a little bit before I answer that question, I will go back to Father's point. Father highlighted some points like about they make teachers in school, family, and churches. But I'll contradict the second point of churches. I know of HIV clients which the church deprived them from taking their medication. I know of HIV adolescents and young persons in the community where we find ourselves, which the church deprived them.
Which church?
Which church are you talking about?
Which church are you talking
When
about?
we talk about the church, there was no name put there beside the church. When they talk about church,
the church is the mother church, it's a Catholic church.
Which other churches are actually deprived them in the name of medication should not be taken. Like how us, the Catholic Church, like how Father just said, condoms is not actually we are reducing creation, and same as the external church out there, other churches out there. They deprive these clients from taking medication in the name of God to heal them. But now the question I always ask, this medication that men of God out there stop them from taking it, who gave those knowledge for this medication to be created or to be made for people to consume in order for them to continue live life? It's not the same God we're talking about. It's the same God. Now, thank you. I'm sure Father will come on that one because it's actually a little bit. We talk about like find out my neighbor. I want to tell you, Mr. Yannick, our organization actually we deal with 50% of adolescents living with HIV and AIDS. In as far as we are working with adolescents living with HIV and AIDS, there are other adolescents who are not HIV positive, which we still integrate them to work with us because of what we have seen their capability. It's not everybody who you tell you're HIV positive accept who you are. So when we talk about stigma, there's stigma is in so many directions. Yes. Sometimes I may be positive and I have stigma, self-stigma, but I stigmatize my own self before even Father or whoever stigmatized me. Some of them stigmatize themselves because they feel like I'm HIV positive, all hope is gone. And let me not go to school again because I'll die soon. It's not the case. You have to first of all accept. You have to accept your status, accept yourself for who you are. Before you start looking for, oh, the community should accept me, the school should accept me, and no. So when you stigmatize yourself, that's what causes self-stigma. For the community come and add to what you are already doing for yourself, you realize that I'm sure that's where you find out adolescents or young people die in those days of that way. But now I think the privilege, like what doctor said, it is going a little bit down because of what there's so much in the field. There's so much awareness. There's so much sensation that's going on, and I just believe that this is what we have to do as on a daily basis. Not into, like I said before. When I find out my neighbor is positive, I think I, for one, have worked with these people. I accept them for who they are. Yes, I accept them for who they are because HIV is not a death sentence. I have seen people positive and they have given birth to children. And those children happens now, some of them happen to be a doctor giving medication back to their parents or their caregivers who were taking care of them back then when they were positive, but they never knew. But today, because of what things have been open and much work has been done, which still needs to be done. Like I said, it's a continuity because these persons are actually human like us. Because if you, I don't think that, like Father widely mentioned, knowledge is
not to be informed is to deform, to be deformed.
If you're not, but like I always say, if you're not informed, you are deformed. Because in as far as you are negative today and I'm positive, doesn't make you feel like you are safe. You are also at the risks.
Yeah, you're also vulnerable.
Yeah, you're vulnerable.
Now, just share with us. You say you deal with HIV and AIDS patients. Just share with us briefly.
Okay.
How do you cope with them? How do you work with them so that some other person can really learn from you? How do you learn?
Thank you, Mr. Yannick. I want to just say something. Normally, there are two things. There are people who go to school to learn something, and there are people who are gifted for what somebody goes to school to learn. I, for one, I think of the way I cope with them because I have actually felt in a situation where I have persons in the family with that situation. But before, back then, for me to actually, walk along with that person was difficult. But only when I had to get knowledge from one place under one workshop to another workshop, and from there I get a little bit of knowledge, and I realized that people have actually been living this life as any other thing. So I had to start going back to give care, because most of the times, like you already mentioned, Dr. Riley mentioned, when people are positive and maybe the auntie realize, they send you back to the village. That has been the style ever since.
All right, we'll talk. We don't really have so much time. Let's move forward. Father, there is one aspect before you react to this. There is one thing. One fuel for stigma is discrimination. That's not all we accept. So, and again, society has placed it such that they have given lots of reasons why patients should not really accommodate themselves in society. For instance, if you're a principal in a school and an HIV patient walks up to say he wants to enroll in that school, Father, how do you behave? You accept the student, or you tell them you are not medically fit, as some schools do?
No, thank you very much for that question. The Catholic Church has never written any document asking HIV persons with the AIDS disease not to take their medications, not to take their drugs. There is no, as far as I know and as far as I have been able to follow our Mother the Church, there is no document that deprives HIV AIDS patients asking them not to take their medication. And secondly, Mr. Kenza, I don't know if there is any, maybe some of these nonchalant people out there who are agents of confusion. I don't think that is the Catholic Church. So the Catholic Church is very clear on this. If a child were to come to my school, of course, we require all our children to come with health certificates, which shows their health condition and their health history. And if a child comes to my school with who has the HIV virus and is having the disease AIDS, I will admit there is no discrimination as far as this is concerned. Please, we have to be clear with what the church is saying. Okay, we have to be clear with what the church is saying. I agree with Doctor that the results of this the disease is dropping. But it is not because the church also has been doing a lot, and people are coming to see more and more that actually at the end of the day, abstinence remains the most effective way, and they are coming to that truth and that conclusion because they have seen how less effective other methods and other means have been, and they are now coming to terms with the reality, with the truth that look, all said and done, we have to be clear with this thing. At the end of the day, if you want to really be sure and have 100% guarantee, abstinence and fidelity remains a way. And more people are seeing this truth, they are accepting this truth, they are living out this truth, and that explains why, that can be part of the reason why the virus is dropping.
Interesting.
Yes, and so there is no discrimination as far as the church is concerned with members. The church is a mother, and as a mother, the church will always be compassionate to those who are suffering this disease, and the church will always open arms. In our health units, we have them. They come there and they take care of them. The nurses are, and when any nurse is brought, the name of any nurse is brought up, that this nurse is showing discrimination to this patient,
or stigmatizing,
or stigmatizing, or making this patient to feel inferior because of his or her health status, that nurse is fired immediately, because you have no right to carry out that kind of attitude.
Very interesting one. Very quickly before we run, we're out of time. Father, moving forward, what do you think should be the best channel to raise awareness against HIV/AIDS prevention?
Now churches, all the churches, and that's why I call upon the priests, the pastors, the imam in the various churches to ensure that they use the pulpit to educate the people. Like a conference or a meeting we had with the governor some months ago, he made mention to us that the people listen to us more than them. In quote, they listen to or they believe the things that men of God, in quote, tells them. And so I think we should take that as an advantage, that if you start saying and tell people, very few persons may say, no, the governor is saying the truth. But when the priest, a pastor or the imam were there for a communical service, that is what he told us, that they believe in us. And so we should take this opportunity to educate these young people. So I said the pulpit should be one of those places. Then we go back to the government, we encourage them to organize seminars and conferences that they could give talks to these persons. And going back to what my brother said, it should not be only on the 1st of December, it should be something that is ongoing. Maybe it should be like per semester, we have that maybe after 2 months or after 3 months, so that these young people or the society in general to know this is something that is real. When we have these seminars, conferences, then we'll succeed in that. And the third group of persons, we go back to our families. Like the church's document will make it clear to us. That is where everything begins. If the family, the parents themselves cannot educate, cannot help your children, it will be difficult. So we have 3 group of persons, so 3 categories of persons: the priest, the priest, the pastors, then all the imams to use the pulpit in the churches to educate. We go back to the government. The government organizes seminars, conferences to educate these young people during holidays, to educate them. You go back to our parents back there at home to educate their children when they are there for vacations or some other kind of things. Then the last group of persons, the doctors also, they have that responsibility to educate the society, the people when they come to the hospital, to tell them the reality about these things. Maybe some of them may not be really, maybe straight to the point, but tell them the truth. When a doctor tells you the truth, it gets right inside your heart. So they should be there to tell them the truth and to guide them and to educate them. So these 4 categories of persons, I think if they put their things together, it will go a long way to help us to maybe to reduce or to save
to curb the spread of the virus. Right, interesting. Thank you very much. Now, Doctor, look into your camera and talk to those who have not got themselves infected with HIV and those who must be living or may be living with HIV at the moment. Talk to them and pass some message to them. And maybe even to the general public.
Well, the message is this: as we commonly say, prevention is better than cure. The priest rightly said the most effective way to prevent HIV is abstinence among those who are not married and fidelity among those who are married. That is the truth. That is the most effective way to prevent HIV. But now, to be realistic, it is very difficult. What I would say is safe sexual practices. Now, and equally, among those who don't know their status, they're encouraged to know their status, and if you're sick, you go on treatment. And if you're healthy, it doesn't mean you're free from HIV. You have to keep on doing everything possible to prevent yourself from acquiring the HIV virus.
Right.
Among those who are ill, taking your medications correctly and appropriately will give you a very healthy life, and HIV is not a death warrant. It is not and will never be.
Right. Interesting. Thank you very much. Mr. Kensa, your last words.
Well, to the entire public, I want to actually say HIV is not a death sentence. And behold, I must say it here. I want to also give a hand of applause to the Kids Project, which I think they have actually been a great work. I've seen their work in the community and centers around. I've seen children at the point of dying, where you find kids, case workers running haters, and before you know it, in the evening, hospital bills have been paid and the children are admitted, and then after some time, they're fine and go back to school. So I just want to say on community-based organization, they should not rely on their effort. They have been doing more. They have been doing good work in the community, but they have to do more. Above all, the churches, let them see a way to come together, have a common goal concerning this pandemic which we're all facing. They see a solution to eradicate this problem, because above all, like I always say, do it now, do it right, and do it together.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Father, your final words.
Yes, the church always encourages her children and every human being to adopt appropriate sexual behavior rooted in abstinence and fidelity. This appropriate sexual behavior is difficult, yes, but it's not impossible. Who says that good things are easy to come by? They always have a price to pay. Of course, it goes with sacrifice. When you are able to sacrifice some bit of effort and some cooperate with some grace, you achieve something. You preserve your life. You remain healthy, stronger, and you are able to enjoy it to the fullest. Appropriate sexual behavior rooted in fidelity and abstinence.
Thank you very much, Father. Thank you very much, fathers. It's been a successful program tonight, and hopefully you enjoyed it. We had in the studio Dr. William Chenjo. He is a medical practitioner with the Mount Mary Hospital. We also had in the studio Reverend Father Nicholas Nanji. He is a pro-life advocate and as well the station manager of Divine Mercy Radio and Television. We also had in the studio Reverend Father Ernest Epa. He is a journalist and also parish priest of the St. Jude Thaddeus Parish in Mile 14, Dibanda. And also we had Mr. Kensa Emmanuel, who is the Southwest Regional Coordinator for the Action for Youth Positivity, something of that sort. My name is Yannick Fonki, and thank you very much for watching. I was joined in the studio and also at the broadcasting room by Ngwan Kindness, who manned the broadcasting machines, and Etienne Tazofa, who was the producer. We'll see you again tomorrow. Good night.